Wabbat. We're back. We're back with more Wu-Sabat. We are back. We are back. We're back with more Wu-Sabat. Wabbat. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Kabul, Kabul, Kabul means welcome, welcome, welcome. We're back, Moisar. All right. Wow. We got a lot to cover. Today is August the 19th, a great day and great time. Well, we welcome you all as usual to listen to our discussions every week, every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're here for you all to talk about the culture of Wu-Sabat, why the culture of Wu-Sabat is the way. It is the only way, the only solution to the challenges that woolly-haired melanated people the world over is dealing with. And so our goal is to do our best to educate our people on the culture of Wu-Sabat, our ancient culture of our ancient ancestors, of how we used to live as opposed to how we live in today. The goal is to properly re-educate us so that we can properly solve our problems and challenges that we're dealing with in the world we live in today. And the issue is, it's all about knowledge. It's all about education, which relates to the decisions that you're going to make. For those who have the right knowledge or the correct knowledge are able to make the best decisions. For those who've been educated in misinformation and incorrect knowledge will make incorrect decisions, and they will reflect on your life. And so you see the challenges that woolly-haired melanated people are dealing with when it comes to power. As the master teachers made it clear, you look at a people's condition based on the knowledge that those people have. So if they're in a bad condition, it's relative to bad knowledge. If they're in good conditions, it's relative to good knowledge. And what matters in the world today is power. Power is what defines the type of lifestyle and conditions you're going to have. And when you look on a global stage, woolly-haired melanated people have the least amount of power. And because of that, we're in the least position when it comes to status of people on the planet. And so that power dynamic can only change and reverse itself when the knowledge of our people change. And so this is the purpose of the culture of Wu-Sabat, is to educate our people of a knowledge of power, of how we're supposed to think, in reference to how we're supposed to make decisions, which will then change the conditions we're in. I repeat, we're only in our conditions due to the knowledge base. And so this is what Wu-Sabat is about. Give us the right knowledge, and that right knowledge, once applied, but see, that's the key, once applied, then the conditions can change. So, as I always say every week, for those who do not know me, my name is Peti Sina Teptu with an A, and I've been over now 36 years student teacher of the profound doctrine of the master teacher known to us as Pandabab Yadnanan, also known as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, who has been teaching us this ancient culture of Wu-Sabat, also known as Wabbat, based on the principles of Ma'at, based on the wisdom of the Hutri. In essence, our culture is about being in harmony with natural nature, living according to the forces of nature. This is what our ancestors, how they used to live. They had a high science. This is why you see in ancient, Kemet, Egypt, this high level of technology of those pyramids that we see in Giza. Only someone who has high science, high mathematics, were able to create something like that in Africa. And so that's the actual proof that you do come from a culture of high science. And the reality is we forgot. We literally forgot our high science, of how we ruled. And that forgetting of our ancient culture is the cause of our self-destruction, of why we're now slaves to foreign culture. And when you're a slave to a foreign culture, they rule and you serve, right? So the creator of a culture is the ruler of the culture, and the ruler of the culture is the beneficiary of the culture. So no matter where we go, if you subject yourself to a foreign culture, then that means you're subjecting yourself to a foreign ruler. And if you're going to subject yourself to a foreign ruler, you're going to subject yourself to that foreign ruler being the beneficiary. And we have to be, how can I say, satisfied with the crumbs that the beneficiary chooses to get to dilly out to us, which is what we're dealing with here in America, all throughout Central America, South America. You see the miserable conditions that woolly head melanated people are in. And it doesn't matter, that a few of us so-called make it, at least economically, right? So we can become your Jay-Z's or your Oprah Winfrey's or your Michael Jordans or your LeBron James who are doing well economically. But economics doesn't relate to political power, which is where power is, real power, where you control the laws, rules, and regulations of a society that dictates its economics. So any black person we talk about, they're getting a check from someone else. They're getting money from someone else. They're not the printers of the money. They're not the ones who are making up the economic system for others to live by. That's where power is. And as long as we are subject to someone else's power structure, then we're going to be at the short end of the stick when it comes to rulership, which is suffering, which is, what we've been dealing with. And that's what we want to talk about today, is why no help from above. The master teacher has written a scroll on that very particular topic. Why no help from above? Why the suffering that we've been dealing with as a people? This master secrets, right? Master secrets number 4 is titled, Why No Help from Above? Why the suffering? Our people are very religious, right? Who were adopted to what they call the Abrahamic religions, whether it be Christianity, Islam, or Judaism. And they're calling in prayers for help. They're calling all kinds of spirit forces for help. And yet still the suffering continues. Yet still the suffering continues. And so that's what this scroll is all about. Why no help from above? Why the continuous suffering? And, what is the answer to that? What is the solution to this? That's what we're really going to talk about. What this is all about, what the answers and the solution. Now, as always, I also like to make a disclaimer. I'm not above making mistakes, because I know I do. I listen to my own lectures and I see errors that I make. If anyone sees it, catches it, let me know. Definitely let me know. Always ask you, support to spread the word. That's extremely important. Because I think if anyone noticed the way I focus on teaching the doctrine, I dedicate myself to showing you the data from the actual books, right? And I always, me, I go all the way back to the very beginning in 1960, 1967, all the way to today, the scrolls that we put out for the last 60 years, almost 60 years, the master teacher has been putting out right knowledge. And my goal is to show you how the message has always been the same, regardless of the clothing of the message, right? So the clothing of the message in the 70s and 80s was Islam, and the clothing of the message changed throughout the 90s, and it's gradually changed throughout 2000s. It actually has just been, how can I say, The update of the information is just fine tuning of the knowledge, in essence, and so that's what I try to show. I try to show the master was saying the same thing 30 years ago, but he said it a little bit different because of the cultural cloak that he was speaking from or through, and that's important because a lot of people think that the master teacher changed. One minute he's saying this, next minute he's saying that, and they interpret that as change. And they only made that mistake because they really don't know the doctrine. They don't really study it. And they're only looking at surface information when if the master, changes his name and calls himself this or calls himself that, people always wonder what name changes. 1 minute with Ansars, next minute with Nubian Islamic Hebrews, next minute with Nawapian with a B, next minute where the Nubian Nation, or with United Nawapian Nation of Moors, or the United Yamasee Native Americans. I mean, we had all these different names, but that the Black people, because we're the first people, we've had many cultural experiences on the planet. And so, the master has painstakingly have moved us through these different cultures that our ancestors lived to get back to the original culture. Because all of the cultures that we have adopted over the years are watered down versions of the original culture of Wu-Sabat, of Wu-Nawab. Everything, even religion. Religions basically literally were plagiarized, as you've heard me say many times before, from our ancient culture. They took our spiritual system and turned it into religion. And that's a very important thing for our people to know. Our people don't know this, and now it's the job of Nawapians to teach our people this, how the so-called religions come out of ancient Kemet, come out of ancient Kush, ancient Samaria. They took the cultural practices of ancient Samaria and ancient Kush, which are spiritual teachings, and turned it into religion. And what is the difference between religion and spiritual teachings? Spiritual teachings is becoming knowledgeable and identifying with the different forces of nature and existence, understanding the different forces and natures of existence, right? Being able to acknowledge that we exist in a multi-dimensional reality. That's what spirituality teaches you, how to develop yourself spiritually, be able to astral project, to be able to transcend from one realm to another realm, how to be in tune with the different forces of nature on the planet Earth. That's what spirituality is all about. Individuals who came into our culture who knew nothing about the science, saw what we were doing, and they interpreted, they copied it, but they didn't know the science. And so it becomes a belief systems where they believe in what we're saying, but they didn't understand the science of what we were teaching and doing, and that's what creates religion, where you have these belief systems of unseen spirit forces, but you don't have any knowledge about these beings. It's not that they're unseen. It's just that you have to have the right, how can I say, knowledge to tap into their realm to communicate. Religious people, they call on these deities, gods, Jehovah, Allah, and they don't know what realm these beings are coming from. They don't know how to actually tap into them. So they just call out in the atmosphere and have no clue if they're making contact or not. They have no clue because they didn't know the science of what we were teaching. Family, it is so important for you guys to teach others, to make that, to show them the distinction between our spiritual system and these religious dogmas that plagiarize our spiritual systems. And that's the issue. When you copy someone else's work, you obviously can't explain it. You don't comprehend it because it's not yours. It originally did not come from you. You stole it. And so that's how things get distorted. Which is why when you look at Christianity, you got all these different types of Bibles, hundreds of different types of denominations. No one agrees on the actual one culture, and everybody disagrees on what that culture is about. So in Christianity, you have the Pentecostals and the Presbyterians and the Seventh-day Adventists and the Baptists and Jehovah Witness, and the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and I mean the list is endless of the different Christian denominations, all starting with the Catholic Church. And when Martin Luther broke away from the Catholic Church, created the Protestants, those who protested against how the Catholics were teaching and administrating the religion, you know, they wanted to basically interpret their way of how they saw the religion, and it created all these denominations. You have the same thing in Islam. You have the same thing in Judaism, from the Hebrew Israelites to the Black Hebrews to the Israelite Jews to the Hasidic Jews. I'm like, this is the problem. It's a huge problem that we see with religion and religious dogma, you know. But it causes it's designed to create maximum confusion. So, with that being said, hold on, family. I got a little glitch on one of my other computers because I want to get into this particular scroll and go into depth about why there is no help from above. And, you know, what I'm saying here, that's in essence what I'm talking about. You know, that's exactly what I'm talking about, why there's no help from above, because of the simple fact that these religious dogmas were specifically had nothing to do with woolly hair melanated people. You know, it has nothing to do with us. But unfortunately, we've embraced these foreign cultures and don't comprehend how detrimental that is to us. It is a very unsafe thing for a people to embrace a foreign system, and that's kind of what we want to get into, and I want to stress it over and over on how important that is to really comprehend. And so that's why I'm reiterating that. So let's get started. Why there's no help from above? From the master teacher, the master secrets. Number 4, Layesh Naut Nasar Munan Fawek, and that's in our language, Sabaic, which stands for why no help from above. My beloved children of Wunawap, let me tell you why so many people namuz, which is pray, and ranun, which is chant, and call out to above and get no help. The first thing is to understand is when one calls out in prayer or chanting, it is a sound, or we say tazuz, which means vibration. And that is frequency, wavelength, and sound is loanat. Sound produces color. Loanat means color in our language, Sabbat. It says everybody's body, right, physical body vibrates, and each sala'u, which means race, each race, a people body vibrates, as you have in the Nagaru Salau, right, the black race, the Negroid race, 9 different species. And from DNA to 9 sabagat means hues or skin color. So, you know, when you look at the black race, the African race, you see different Africans, right? They say the Africans have the most divergent genetics there is out of all of the other peoples. So if you look at the Sans tribe, they have one look, you know, they're black with woolly hair, versus we got the Mumbuti, they call them the Mumbuti or the Twa that lives in the Congo, right? Then they're both short like the Sans tribe, 4 feet tall, but they're a little bit different features, you know, different features. And so what we're saying is you'll see that. So you have like the Dinka that lived in South Sudan. These guys are like, they're tall, 7 feet tall. I don't know if you know the basketball player Manute Bol. Manute Bol used to play in the NBA. He was from the Dinka. He was like 7 foot 7 feet tall, and all. He was of the Dinka tribe, Manute Bol. If anybody, you can look him up. And then you have the Wudabi, or they're also known as the Fulani. The Fulani, they live in like West Africa and Nigeria. They're the ones allegedly causing all the problems that's going on in like in the Sahel and Mali and whatever. There's a lot of conflict out there with the Fulani, but they're tall too. They're tall like the Dinka because actually they come from the Dinka. They're mixed seed and all, and so you see these different variations of our genetics of the Nagato race, of the African race. And the master said, he's explained, there's 9 different, species of us, of these differences. So that's important to understand, right? Now we go on where I'm at. I'm at paragraph, I left off at paragraph 3. Paragraph 4, he says, from 9 to the blackest to DNA, the lightest of the Nagato race, and this is determined by what is called pigment from Latin, which means to paint or color, right? Which is the melanin we're talking about. The different contents of melanin within our race will show up in how we look on the outside. So high melanin content, like the Dinka is like jet black. The Dinka is like jet black, the South Sudanese versus like the Sands tribe. Sands tribe, you have some of them are brown, but most of them, a lot of them are light brownish. Now I don't think that's a deficiency of melanin with the Sands, because the Sands actually have the purest genetics, and that shows up in their woolly hair. So they have a high melanin content. So they're actually light for another reason. That's the mineral concentration in their blood, which gives them a different complexion. It's not because they mixed in or anything. Their genetics been altered. Unlike the Fulani, now they mixed in, and you see because they don't have the straight 9 ether hair. They have like an 8 ether hair when you look at them. So that's important to know. So let's go paragraph 7. He says the fastest the movement, the darker the skin color, right? So when we have dark skin, dark complexion, obviously because everything is vibration, and so the stronger the vibration, the darker the color is in essence what the master is saying, which also shows you we have a high melanin content, which is why we're dark anyway as a race. It says movement to move takes strength, or nishat, energy, right? This is what at the 9th month of birth, the newborn baby is at its lightest hue or shade of skin color until it grows stronger and becomes darker, right? So babies are, the genetics are at its weakest point, and as any human being grows, their genetics get stronger, right? Your blood gets more active because you're breathing, your lungs are developing, basically. And so you see the body is developing into its maturity state and all. So that's just natural growth for every human being or every species in nature. Goes through the same process where the genetics start off weak, and then as it grows, the genetics get stronger. It's what the master is talking about. He goes on to say the farah will change, which is your hair will change, as well as their genes become stronger as they grow. It says even as well as the kakasu or the mukasu babies can be born with yellow hair, or we call fur, and blue eyes. That is, they age or grow. Will change color from yellow to brown to and blue eyes to almost green, or no, that gray eyes, from blue eyes to gray eyes, or to even hazel, like a brown, he says. This is all results of pigmentation in their genetics, right? So that's why you see the different changes from babies as they're growing into adults, as their genetics get more, strong and developed. You'll see these, natural changes within humans. So in actual fact, your skin color is dictated from your genetics, right? From your informational ancestors into your informational present being, right? So we all inherit our genetics from our family, right? Mother, father, who gets it from their mother and father, and so on and so forth, he says. And the Wapians, this is determined by the power, speed, motion, vibration, frequency, and strength of the pigmentation, right? So obviously melanin dominant people have the strongest, genetics, basically, which is why we have this dark color. And that takes a lot of energy. So our bodies are harnessing a lot more energy than any other people's genetics. Why they say you mix with a Nagato person, that child will have more of our character traits than the race that mixed with it, because we have a stronger genetic than anyone else. So that's an actual fact. Something our beloved sister, Dr. Frances Cress Weldon, spent whole life trying to educate our people about our genetics that our people really didn't comprehend, didn't listen to her. And she's warned us. Many Black scholars were trying their best to warn, who dealt with genetics now, were trying their best to warn our people about the power of our genetics and the science of melanin, which is the Mukasu downplays it. They downplay the science of melanin, because they're trying their best to not let our people realize the power of melanin. So, and I'll bring up some of the medical doctors, the Black medical doctors who did research on that. One, I've talked about him before in my lectures, if you've heard me, Dr. Carol Barnes. Dr. Carol Barnes. He was a chemist. He was a chemist. Let me see if I can pull him up. Dr. Carol Barnes. That's him right here. That's the brother right here. He was a chemist. This was back in the 80s and 90s. He was talking about the science of melanin. He wrote a book, Melanin, the Chemical Key to Life. Family, look him up. Extremely important, because they're not going to tell us. And that's what he was saying. He said they didn't really want to publish this research and let the general people know, especially us. They don't want us to know the science of our genetics. You have also Dr. Anne Brown, it's a female, same thing. She did research on melanin. Dr. Anne Brown, what is melanin? I think she worked for, I don't know if she worked for the CDC. She worked for some government agency she was a medical doctor, and she did a lot of research on melanin. Family, look her up. Study what she said, her research. The Mukasu has done everything in their power to hide the science of melanin. They downplayed it, and then they say, "Oh, that's just color, the skin color. That's just make sure ain't no big." No, it is a big deal. Everything in order to have life, to sustain your life, you have to have melanin, and all melanin is the physical manifestation of the sun. These are particles. Melanin is a molecule, and that molecule only formulates because of the fact that it is a part of our genetics being physical that allows us to be in harmony with the sun and nature as a whole. As the children of noon, you have to have melanin to be in harmony with nature. That's the point. Okay? And this is why the Mukasu has went through great trials to weaken our genetics through the poison food, poison medicine, poison media. You go on and on and on. Our people to this very day do not understand the science of their genetics. If they really understood the science of their genetics, we wouldn't eat what we eat. We wouldn't be chasing snow bunnies, and as Umar Johnson talked about, because we would know better. You wouldn't do anything to dilute your genetics. But that's how you know we're not in our right mind. That's how you know we're under a spell, as the master teacher said, because we do things to kill ourselves and then wondering why we're suffering. And this is how we fell. This is how we fell in ancient times, and why we're in our conditions, because of the pollution or the dilution of our genetics. It all goes back to genes. So you have Dr. Ann Brown, you have Dr. Carol Bunch. I'll give you one more. Dr. Richard King on melanin. Dr. Richard King. Again, see that melanin, ancient Kemetic spiritual awakening. Richard King was a brain surgeon, family. Dr. Richard King was a brain surgeon, another doctor that dealt with melanin. You know, dealt with melanin. Look at that melanin lecture. You have Dr. Francis Cress Weldon, you have Dr. Ann Brown, you have Dr. Richard King. You know, he talks about the black dot, melanin that's in your brain, neuromelanin. That's what Dr. Richard King talked about. That's how you activate your third eye. The pineal gland is activated within the melanin that's in the brain. Your brain has what they call cerebral spinal fluid. The cerebral spinal fluid, right, is coated with melanin. And when it's activated, when the pineal gland is vibrating, it activates the melanin, and that's what connects you with the higher dimensions. But we eat poison food, in particular sugar, actually disrupts it. And the Mukaso puts sugar in damn near everything he produces. He puts sugar in it. He knows, because he knows. One, he's addicted to sugar. That's one reason why he does it. The other reason he does it, because it actually destabilizes our melanin. And they know this. And this is some of the work that Dr. Carol Bonds, as a chemist, was saying, how your melanin becomes toxic. And he was explaining that in his book, Melanin, the Key to Life. You actually might be able to download this book for free, to be honest with you, Dr. Carol Bonds. So I just wanted to I want the family to give y'all the actual black scholars who did great work on melanin. They try to downplay it. And so when the master teacher's talking about it, you know, what he calls sun heat genes, right? For those who know that, this is the power of our sun heat genes. So let's keep going. I'm going back to the book. I'm at paragraph 14. So each race vibrates on their own frequency, and by their inner energies get them outer skin luan, or skin color, and or hue, depending on the strength of their ancestors' DNA, their chromosomes. Okay, the fastest or strongest is the pure Chamim or Chamet Salal, the black race, right? We have the strongest genetics because we have that high melanin content. and produces energy. That's what melanin does. They don't tell, it harnesses energy. They got people running away from the sun. You have to be in the sun. That's what recharges our body. It charges your melanin. Why do you think when you go out in the sun, black people, you get darker? That's because the melanin now is coming to the surface of the skin and it's recharging itself. The Mukasu, he'll sit there and tell you, no, the melanin is blocking the sun. Melanin blocks the sun. That's a lie. That's a horrible lie. Melanin does not block the sun. Melanin attracts the sun. It attracts the energy from the sun and charges the body, charges the cells. Remember, every cell has what? Mitochondria DNA. What is the mitochondrion? The mitochondrion is the energy of the cell. And that energy gets recharged through the melanin. If we understood this science, we would live longer. As the master teacher said, The physical body is able to live at least 120 years old. We're dying at 60, 70, 80 years old. Why? Because we toxify our own melanin. And it's not activated the way it should be. Now, I didn't want to get into a topic of melanin. But it's important because the master is trying to explain how important your genetics are. You have to understand this, how important our genetics are. Okay? And I want to give you guys the facts on this and the research. So let's keep going. So paragraph 16 said the slowest or weakest is the impure Labin Salal, the Mukasu. He's talking about the Mukasu has that melanin recessive. So they don't have their bodies can't harness this energy the way our bodies can. So they're not able to connect to nature the way we're able to connect to natural nature, and it shows in their culture. That's why the Mukasu culture has no connection to nature, because they can't tap into the forces the way we do. So when you look at our original cultures, Africans, meaning you go back 500 years, you see that most of all our culture was connected to nature, whether here in Africa or in the Americas. Culture was mostly, in fact, most people on the planet was into being in tune with nature. They had their different science of it, of course, but everyone, ancient cultures all understood the science of nature. The Mukasu taking over the planet, he eradicated that kind of thought. He called everyone pagans. And that's what a pagan means. I've talked about this before. It means pa and gan. Gan means garden. Pa means the article the, L, the definite article the, right? Pronoun. So the garden means those who lived in the garden. It really just meant those who culture was based on nature, and they waged war. The Catholic Church waged war on everyone who was living nature culture. And they wanted to put everyone under their spell of their religion. And so what happened to us? What happened to us, because we've been put under the spell of their religion, now our people all over the globe is doing what? What are we doing? Worshiping the white man as God. That's the highest form of white supremacy. When you worship the white man as God, and we think we're trying to figure out why we don't have no power. Our people can't figure it. You worshiping your adversary as God, which puts you under them. And if the white man is God, well, what the hell do you think black people are? I listened to this female the other day on talking about she was, grew up as a Mormon. And that's what they teach. She was saying she was taught that as a child, that the white man is God and black people are the devil. Literally. That's the Mormon doctrine. That's basic Christianity teaching that. Because if they, what do they say? The prince of darkness is what? The devil, the prince of darkness. That's their doctrine. And our people worship this. Our people literally are out of their freaking minds. And it's the job of Sabaeans to educate our people. They have to educate our people how dangerous this is. We don't understand how dangerous this has been to us, how detrimental this has been, messing with our consciousness. But let's go back. Where am I at? Let's go back. All right. So he says, so the slowest of genetics, or the weakest genetics, is the Mukasu, and to each their own in between. He said it is all communicated to you by your Salafu, your ancestors, right? We get our genetics from our ancestors, the living spirits of your own who vibrate as you from the spiritual abode to your own Yasar family spirits back to the Panatharu, right? So what he was saying is that we're connected to our ancestors who exist in higher dimensions, higher spiritual realms. When they're connected to them by genetics, through your mother and father, to their mother and father, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, even though they transition physically, spiritually, they still exist. Energy, spirit is energy. Energy doesn't die. Energy just transforms from one state to another. It either can elevate in energy or descend in energy, right? And so you do have ancestors who ascended in energy. Those are the ancestors that you're calling on, that you want to connect with, because you're linked to them by genetics, by blood. Because your energy is the same as their energy. You're vibrating at the same frequency. This is what the Mukasu science of quantum entanglement is all about. If the particles are the same, they're connected to each other regardless of distance. Let me say that again. In quantum mechanics, it explains, and they know as an actual fact, if particles are the same, regardless of distance, they are able to still connect with each other. That's a high science that the Mukasu just figured out, something we always knew, that we were in contact with our spiritual ancestors because we had the same genetic, the same spirit force moving through us, moved through them. So you're always connected to them. So we're getting into why this book was written. Why no help from above? Because you're not connecting with your ancestral spirits. You're connecting with foreign spirits. You're calling on the white Jesus. Family, you have to teach this to our people. You have to explain to them how dangerous this is. That we're connected to beings of another spirit. Each race have their own spiritual ancestors. Each race have their own spiritual ancestors. This is so important to understand. So let's keep going. Even the Quran of the Arabs, Arab means mixed people, of a Chaldean man named Ibrahim, or from Abraham, right? And an African woman they call Hajar, from Hagar, right? Who birthed the very first Arab, the son they call Ishmael, the first Arab, the first Nubian, who had dark skin, yet he had curly hair, right? So he had like 8 ether hair, like the Wudabi or the Fulani. Okay, so his father Abraham is a Persian of Chaldea, basically East Indian, and Abraham by Ubrum name, and was dark skinned yet with thin straight hair, not nappy wabar, right? So you're talking about the East Indians. And Ishmael's mother Hagar was an African. She was from Magmat, which is Egypt, was dark skinned with woolly hair. So the Arabians' own warner and prophet called Mustafa Muhammad Al-Amin from Ahmed bin Abdullah received the book called the Quran. And it says in the Quran, chapter 35, it says this, chapter 35, verse 28, the Quran teaches, and among people and moving creatures and grazing livestock are various colors and similarly. Only those fear Allah from among his servants who have knowledge. Indeed, Allah is exalted in might and forgiving. So the Quran is telling you, that Allah created species in different colors, right? Different genetics. Okay. And so the Quran admits that. So it says that people were portioned out in creation in different colors, the master says, according to the Quran. Says, so each Salau, race of people, have a certain number of species within. So the Nagato have 9 different species. We talked about that. You have the Gerado, or the East Indians, they have 7. The Mongolo, the Asians, have 3, right? The Chinese, Japanese, and the Koreans. And the Mukasu have 6 hues or species. And he says, and each has to dial in on just the right and exact station or speed, vibration, frequency, or voice as your family in the spirit world, called family spirits or familiar spirits, right? So if you want to communicate with your spiritual family, right, who exists on higher dimensions and densities, you have to be vibrating at their frequency. And so this is the key. Your body has to be at a certain vibration and frequency. That's the main point of what the title of the book, Why No Help from Above. We're calling on spirits that we're not connected to by genetics. And so we can't get no assistance. We are like trees without roots. We're like a tree without roots. What happens to a tree that's not connected to its roots? It withers and dies. In order to have a sustained life force, you have to be connected to your roots. When you disconnect from your roots, that's really what we call losing your soul. When you lose your mind, your consciousness of who you are by natural nature, you've given up your soul force. You've lost your connection to your ancestors. So familiar spirits, the master here in the Hebrew Strongs, Bawa, Obaba, which is a form of necromancy, says necro, Rome, see. It says the Jewish woman spoke Yiddish, a combination of German, Polish, French, created the Ouija board of the German, which you have Ya or Ja, means yes, and the French you have oui, that also means yes, Ouija board. So the reason you see people the world over suffering and dying with no help from above, so below, outside of them, is mind linked to inside of them. If they call on or pray or chant to a deity or an angel or saint or spirit from another race's vibrational rate or wave, they cannot hear them. So you can't get any assistance or help or guidance when you're not in tune with your familiar or family spirit forces that you're connected to by nature. If you're connected to someone else's spirit forces, right, they're not going to help you. You know, they only help their own, to each their own. That's the science of nature. Again, we've lost our spiritual science. We've said this many times. The master teacher in the 1960s said we've lost our spiritual science. And when you don't have a spiritual science, destruction is imminent. No people can survive without having and understanding their own spiritual connection to nature. When you're cut off from nature, then that's the end of you. You lose what sustains your life force. Humans live off of nature. That's why we need food from the earth. We need clothes from the earth. We need material for shelter from the earth. We live off of nature. When you lose your connection to nature, death is imminent. That's why people who don't have money in this kind of society, basically they can't afford none of the necessities of life, and so they live on the street and they wither and they die. Because this system ruled by the Mukaso, he runs it based on his economic system, and if you're not in tune with it, you suffer. The only way to get away from it is you have to be in tune with your original way of life. Then you can overcome his system, his system of oppression. If we, as woolly-haired melanated people, get back to our way of doing things, right? So let's keep going. So he says, they are unfamiliar, not family, with them and not on the right radio frequency to commune with them, as was the purpose of the Ark of the Covenant mentioned in the book of Exodus, chapter 25, right? That was why the God of the Bible gave the children of Israel, as the master teacher said, the Ark of the Covenant so they can communicate. He gave them the right, that Ark dialed into the right frequency to communicate. If you read Exodus 25, it says this, verse 10, and they shall make an ark of shittim wood, 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and a cubit and a half the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And there I will meet with thee. He says, I will meet with thee, God, and I will commune with thee. I will communicate with you from above, the mercy seat. Right? And so basically, God of the Bible will communicate with the children of Israel. He gave them, it's like he gave them a cell phone. The master teacher talks about that a lot, So you have to have the right frequency to communicate with your spirit forces. And if we're not in the right tone frequency, then there's no way to do it. That's in essence what the master's saying. This is why our people are calling out. They're suffering, and there's no solution to none of our problems because we've lost our spiritual science. This is so important. This goes back to why overstanding the SMAT circle, the master teacher, taught us about. Overstanding the different densities. We must overstand the different densities. We're in a third density, family. The Nathar are vibrating at the fourth density, going up to the ninth density. So if you're only in tune with the third density, which is what we are as humans, we're only in tune with the third density, and your family's operating from the fourth density, then that's why there's no communication you have. The fourth density is what we call the mental plane. Our minds are connected to the mental plane. Our minds are connected to the mental plane, the fourth density. But if our minds are connected, why we're not hearing, seeing, and talking to our ancestors? Real simple. We're not hearing, seeing, or talking to our ancestors because we've lost our mind. We're out of our freaking mind. That's what it means. You lose your soul. When you're not in tune with your own natural nature, when you're not thinking like who you are by nature. So you lose your consciousness of who you are. That's what that's all about. To lose one's soul, right? So hold on, I want to bring up one of my favorite scrolls that deals with this. You have the what is it? I think the science of creation. I've talked about this many times before. You have the different planes the master talks about. The different planes. And so he breaks it down. These different realms and planes. No, it's not here. Okay, here it is. This is just a diagram showing you that the planes are all interconnected. And so the mental plane is what connects us to the masters. Okay, the mental plane. So if we go to the master secrets, where are we at? Master secrets number 3. Master secrets number 3. Dimensional links. Right, so you have the mental reservoir. This is master secrets number 3, the mental reservoir. This is what connects us. The problem is our minds are connected or vibrating at this density, but we're not in tune with our ancestors because our consciousness is focused on a whole different lifestyle and culture, which alters your vibration. The food we eat alters your vibration. So it literally creates like a block. Everything in existence is vibration. We have to understand that. Everything in existence is vibration. So, I have some questions I want to go through real quick in this discussion that you all, it should be a help. Where we at? Let's see. Where we at? All right, Nupa Lectures, my notes, right? Again, today's August the 19th, 2025. We have these discussions every Tuesday, 7 p.m. sharp Eastern Standard Time. Wabbat family, Wabbat. As a reminder, this is about the culture of Wu-Sabat. So it's open for questions. That's why I'm doing the live, so we can have a discussion. If you guys don't ask questions, I'm just going to teach. But I'm here for you guys to ask questions because it's so important. I'm talking about questions pertaining to what we talk about, because unfortunately, a lot of student teachers don't focus on this aspect of our doctrine. My whole mindset is focusing on the solutions, not keep talking about the problems that we're dealing with. A lot of us, unfortunately, we focus, and I'm talking about Black people in general. We love talking about our issues, but we don't talk about the solution. Here, my main focus is the solution, and the only solution is our spiritual development. If you choose to ignore it, which is what our people love to do, they love to ignore their own spiritual nature, and so the suffering will continue. It's pointless to keep talking about the problems, and you don't want to admit what the solution is. We're at war with Leviathan. Leviathan is 6 ether forces. The only way to defeat 6 ether is with 9 ether. The only way to defeat 6 ether is with 9 ether, using your 9 mind, using sound reasoning. That's the only way to outsmart, to outthink 6 ether. So if we want to free the master teacher is captured by 6 ether, Leviathan. Who are the children of 6 ether? The Mukasu are the children of 6 ether and all their converts. They have many converts to 6 ether of all races. So you have many black devils running around there, running around the world, who have 6 ether consciousness. They think like the devil. We're at war with 6 ether. Only 9 ether can defeat 6 ether, family. 9 ether, the 9 mind, is overstanding your own spiritual nature. That is the only way we will be able to defeat them. We're wondering why the master is still stuck and locked in that hellhole, because we're literally trying to use 6 knowledge to combat 6 knowledge. It doesn't work that way. The Mukasu are the masters of 6 ether. You're not going to beat them like that. You only defeat them using the force, the spirit force that's in opposition to them, which is 9. 9 can defeat 6. 6 is not defeated, especially us. They're the wisest there is when it comes to 6. As the master teacher explained to us, Leviathan sends them the smartest 6 ether spirit forces goes to the Mukasu, not us. The 6 ether forces that come to us is based on ridiculousness, foolishness, folly, and fumble. We just look how we behave. Just look how we behave. Look at all the leaders in Africa. They have no clue how to run none of their countries. All of them is sold out to the Mukasu, while their people are suffering. They have no love for themselves. Complete idiot. And they have all that wealth and power and don't even realize it under their feet. Why don't they realize their own wealth and power under their feet? Because they're not in their right freaking mind. Running around with white women, running around with business suits. They're doing everything in their power to be like the Mukasu, and they're wondering why they're suffering. Again, you cannot defeat them using their knowledge. I know our people love saying that. We're going to fight fire with fire. That's ridiculous. You fight fire with water. It's opposing force. So again, I have some questions, statements I want to go over real quick. Yeah, family, it's important to listen to the lectures more than once. I always tell you all that. Ask questions, send comments, right? It stimulates the conversation. It'll allow us to expand the conversation, right? We need to do it because we're at war, right? We're at war with 6, and we have to understand this war that we're dealing with. So let's keep going. First statement. Number 1, we have been under mass mind control for 500 years by way of global racism, white supremacy, aka the white man is God. That's the number one form of white supremacy, right? Where the white man has us worshiping him as God. You can't get no higher than that God, right? That's white supremacy. White people supreme. That's mass mind control. That's mind control that our people are under, and they don't they don't understand. That's mind control. You worshiping the white man as God. That's insanity. And I've said before, family, it's better to focus on the children than the adults, because the older you get, the more, how can I say, embedded you are in a culture, and you're not going to change because you become addicted to that lifestyle. And so older people, they lack the willpower or the knowledge or the energy to break away from something they were born and raised into. So it's better to focus on the young, the children, rather than trying to convince an adult. And that's just the reality of it. Let's keep going. Question number 2, or statement number 2. The helping hand you're looking for is at the end of your own arm. That's something the master teacher drilled in us. Stop begging others for help. We have all we need, which is each other. Once we have love for self and kind, we can solve our problems if we embrace our culture. Right? You can only change your mind, which changes your vibration, which changes your conditions. You see that? So the reason why we're in our conditions because of the way we think. You have the power to change how you think. So you can change your mind, which changes your vibration. Your mind, the way you think, is a frequency, it's a vibration. And once you change your vibration, you change the conditions you're dealing with. That's the key, changing your conditions. You first have to what? Change your mind, the way you think, because the way you think is what puts you in the conditions you're in. That's why right knowledge exists. The master teachers gave us the right knowledge, which will change the way we think, change our minds. And once you change your mind, you change your vibration. And once you change your vibration, now you can alter your conditions. I hope you're with that. Number 3, you must realize that life is everywhere, existing in different dimensions. Right? So that goes back to the SMAT circle. So the SMAT circle teaches us about what? The different types of densities. We're in the 3rd density. You have the 4th density. 5th, there's life everywhere in all these different realms. Because everything is vibration and frequency. Everything in existence based on vibration and frequency, resonancies. And so that's why you don't see it, right? Because it's your eyes focus at a certain vibration. That's why people have different eyesight. Some people can see better than others. Some people can hear better than others. Some people can smell better than others. Those is vibrations, frequencies, based on your genetics, based on your health practices, right? That's why you look at someone like LeBron James, excellent athlete at the highest level. Him and Simone Biles, she's a gymnast, excellent athletes, because their bodies, basically, they're doing the best they can to get the maximum efficiency of their bodies versus someone who doesn't train like that. So that's everything in existence works that way. It's based on, it's like a polarity. It's a scale, like a thermometer, right? From high to low. You can function at a high level or you can function at a low level depending on how you take care of yourself. Okay, question. Good question about who's this question from Kristen Lawrence about relaxation. how important it is to relax. It's very important. It's of the utmost importance to relax. Keep in mind, the Mukasu's lifestyle has all of us chasing money. Why? Why do we chase money? Because he monetized the planet Earth. So we got to pay for everything with him, right? We got to pay for our food. We got to pay for our clothing. We got to pay for shelter. We got to pay for utilities. We need the phone connection. We need internet connection. We have televisions we're paying for, right? For cable TV or regular TV, whatever. He cell phones, right? He literally put our whole lifestyle based on economics of chasing money to get the things that we need to be able to function in this society. You like where I live in Metro Atlanta, in Georgia, you can't live here without a car. Most of the places in America, you can't live without a car, right? So you got to buy a car, and when you have a car, you got to pay for gas. You got to pay for, if your car need new tires or you need oil change. And he's constantly got us chasing money to live. That's the trick. And so you don't have no time to damn near relax. And then because of racism, he pay us less money than he pay his own people. Or he doesn't give us the good jobs he gives his people. So we don't have as much money as they do. And then they raise the price of everything. So, they talk about inflation, that you're paying double for the same stuff, but our money didn't double. They didn't pay us double. So now we work in two jobs now, right? The man and the woman has to work. So who takes care of the child? Social media is now taking care of your children, raising your children. Their peers who are there around raising your children. We're wondering why our people are so mentally messed up, because they don't give you no time to relax, because they set up a system that then make it impossible to relax. Especially with the racism they got going on. So the system is designed to create chaos, maximum chaos. That's how they rule. 6 ether rule through chaos. 9 ether rules through order. That's why our culture is based on ma'at, not capitalism. You heard me say that many times, right? We're not capitalists. We're not socialists. We're not communists. We're not fascists. We're not Marxists. All the freaking whatever systems they came up with. Our system is ma'at. Ma'at is based on order. Nature has an order to it. Don't you realize every species that nature creates, it provides its substance. Nature made sure that the lion has what it needs to survive. Nature made sure that the eagle had what it needs to survive. Nature made sure that the dolphin has what it needs to survive. Nature is the provider, not the Mukasu. Why is the Mukasu providing for us? Why we keep going to Walmart? Why we keep going to Kroger and Publix and A&P or wherever the store you're next to, where you shop at, or the shopping malls? Why we keep going to them to get our needs when nature provides our needs? But we're under a spell. So we rather buy apples from Walmart rather than just grow apples from our own apple tree. We can do it. Woolly haired melanated people, you hear me say it many times. We have a whole freaking continent. All of Africa, and look at all the countries we have. Haiti, Barbados, Trinidad, what else? You got Dominican Republic, Panama, all these places that we control land, resources, but what don't we have? Love for each other. We hate each other. You got the Dominicans who don't think they black and don't want nothing to do with Haitians, and they live in the same freaking island. We're insane. We're absolutely insane. We're under a hypnotic spell of stupidity, massive ignorance, and we rather suffer trying to live in the Mukasu's reality rather than work with each other and solve our own problems. That's how you know we're under a spell. Because we rather take the abuse of this Mukasu and got the nerve to keep complaining about him. What's wrong with us? Why we keep complaining about someone we choose to live with? We shouldn't be complaining at all. We should take the abuse simply because we choose to live with his oppression when we don't have to. That's the beauty of it. We don't have to. All we need is each other. but we want to be Igbo, and we want to be the Fulani, and we want to be Yoruba, and we want to be the Dogon, and we want to be the Africans are obsessed with their damn tribalism. I was debating a Somalian, talking about we ain't black, Somalians ain't black, we ain't got nothing to do with black. This is insanity, mass insanity, and he's dead for real about it, and he don't want to hear nothing else. What the Zulus complaining about African Americans, using Zulu name in Louisiana or whatever. They were, complaining, why y'all using our name? I'm like, we're a sick people. We're absolutely sick. It's the spell. It's 6,000 years of sickness. That's all it is. Forgetting that we all come from the exact same origin. We're all children of the sun. All woolly-haired, melanated people have the exact same origin. We made up all these stupid tribes. Crips, or I'm Bloods. I'm Pentecostal. I'm Presbyterian. I'm Seventh-day Adventist. I'm a Hebrew Israelite. I'm a 5%er. I'm Nation of Islam. I'm a Moorish Science Temple. I'm Native American. We're all these different things except what nature created us to be, children of the sun. Why do you think we call ourselves Sabians? Those who come from the stars. We're not stuck to one planet. We are a universal species. You have 9 ether people all over the multiverse. Why are you so stuck on one planet? A planet ruled by demons, by the way. How to be a good person. That's in our core cultural principles. Core cultural principles of Wu-Sabat. I talk about it all the time. In the core cultural principles. What it means to be a Sabian. Family. Everyone must memorize this, know this, live it, teach it to your children. Someone who cares and is passionate about it, right? You have to be a caring person if you're going to be a Sabian. Someone who is helpful and honest. We have to be honest. Sabians are stuck on their ego. A lot of them are. A lot of Nawapians are stuck on their ego. That's Leviathan, right? Leviathan is what? It's based on 6 principles of Leviathan. Ignorance, it starts with ignorance, right? Because 6 ether puts your mind in a state of ignorance. And from ignorance, you get fear. From fear is what perpetuates the ego. From the ego, you get lust and desire. That's why our people are obsessed with lust, chasing money. From lust and desires, you get lies and deceptions. People will lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want. That's why y'all is corruption in governments that's ruled by our people. The Mukasu governments, they're nothing but a ball of corruption. That's all they do. That's the epitome of who Donald Trump is. Corruption. And from corruption, you get anger and bloodshed. That's where the wars come from. When people lie, cheating, and stealing, that makes someone upset. Here comes the fighting. Right? So that's Leviathan. We have to overcome that. So being a good person, right? Someone who cares and is passionate about it. Someone who's helpful and honest. Someone who's responsible and hardworking, right? As a Sabian, you have to be responsible. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. How you going to be a productive person in the tribe, in the nation, and you don't even take care of your family? You have children, take care of your children, brothers. Women, be a mother to your children. Stop worrying about men, chasing men, and worry about making sure your children are taken care of, properly educated and nurtured. Stop feeding your children poison, females. We're poisoning our own children. My parents, my family poisoned me. I did a lot of that crap to my own children. I'm supposed to have known better. This is fixed. We have to fix ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. We can't blame nobody. Number 4, someone who's honorable and demands justice, right? The Mukasu is not just. They're judges. All they do is lie, and they're racist, and they penalize our people 10 times harder than they do themselves. They're not a just people. Why are we living with them? We have to be just. We have to set up a system of justice. That's what man is. We have to be honorable to each other. We have to do this. We can't be asking for justice from our enemy. Wake up, family. What's the next one? Number 5. Someone who's righteous and humble. Righteous, right? That's what Wu-Sabat makes you. Gives you the right knowledge, makes you righteous. Those who make the right decisions, but be humble. We want to be righteous and egotistical about it. We got to cut that out. A righteous person is supposed to be a humble person. The master teacher was humble. He knew he was 10 times smarter than all of us put together. He didn't rub that in our face. Why do you think the Nathar sent him? They're humble. They care about us. They know our condition that we're in. They know we're out of our minds. Yeah. Number 6, excited and cheerful. Enjoy life. You're supposed to enjoy your life. That's why when we live together, we're functioning as a community, we have our festivals and our events. We don't have to go to them for parties. We don't have to go to Las Vegas. We don't have to go to Disney World. And I like Disney World a lot. But you know, Walt Disney, that man was a Satanist, according to his family members. He's a part of the Illuminati. There are demons, and we're supporting these demonic systems. That's why we have to create our own. Nuwapians are not about being hermits and living in a cave. We're not spiritualists who want to live in a cave, like these weird gurus and stuff like that, away from the world. We're here to enjoy life. We represent life. That's what the Ankh is. The Ankh tree represents life. Life eternal, the living. We're the bright people, the colorful people, bright colors. We enjoy life. But the so-called enjoyment, incitement we like today is toxic. We're going to strip clubs. We're going to concerts to listen to degenerate music and then paying a ton of money for it, by the way. Our people are spending $1,000 on concerts today. Think a Beyonce concert is like $1,000. That's insanity. Hold on, I'll get to your questions. Let me just finish this. Number 7, someone who's loyal and committed, right? You had so-called Nawapians, aka Black Devils, who betrayed the master teacher. No loyalty. No loyalty. We have to be loyal to each other, family. We have to be loyal to each other. You can't call yourself a Sabaean and you're not loyal to Sabaeans. Sabaeans come first. Your tribe, your people come first. Be loyal to us. Be committed to the culture. Number 8, someone who is kind and considerate. Be kind and considerate to everybody. Be kind, considerate to, because we now have an epidemic, especially where I live. Every time I go out in the street, I'm driving from one place to another. Somebody's on a corner asking for money. Now I give it to them. They may be scamming or not, but that's not why I give it. I give it because I care about our people. I give because I actually have the money to give. A lot of people don't have the money I actually have the money to give. So I do give, because I love my people. Now, I don't get to Mukasa. I don't get to other races. The Mukasa, they're people begging on the street. Their people got tons of money. So that's where they need to be asking for money. Because sometimes I see Mukasa because I purposely make sure I live in Black areas. I'm around my people. And I'm here to help our people. Now, I know our people like to scam. So we also want to be mindful of that. We don't want to be taken advantage of, but we do need to be kind, considerate, and caring about, because our people don't have right knowledge. And unfortunately, a lot of them are not going to get right knowledge because they don't want to hear it. That doesn't mean we don't care about them. You still care about your people. Last one, number 9, someone who's neat, clean, and orderly. You have to be neat. You have to be clean. You know, all this stuff I'm reading for you, all it comes out of the Family Guide scroll the master put out back in the 90s, or codes of conduct. We have we have a book on living. I forget the name of it. Or also the neatness and purity book. That's where all this information is coming from. I'm not making nothing up. So I want anyone accuse me of making something up. All this stuff comes out of our books. I just codified it, to make it easy. But again, a Sabian is about being a good person. It's about being a good person, and you can't do that until you overcome Leviathan within your nature, right? The 6 attributes of Leviathan. The biggest thing I noticed with Sabians is that darn ego, man. Especially a lot of so-called Sabian teachers out there. It's hard to have a conversation with them because they quite few of them have a self-righteous mentality. If you don't, focus on their version of explaining the doctrine, they don't want to hear you. Listen, the doctrine is so vast. It's very vast. And because we have different states of consciousness and levels of reasonability, we may read the same thing and have 2 different interpretations. That happens a lot. But you got to be humble enough to figure out who has the highest level of reasonability. That's who we should listen to. But a lot of people don't want to do that. If they feel they're right, and they don't want to hear anyone else. And we lack the patience or tolerance to be able to communicate with each other, have a discussion without a debate, so we can come to a conclusion. This is why we're not functioning as a tribe the way we should be. It's easy to solve our problems if we just work together, but we're having a problem with that. Listen, man, the master, and I told about this. That's why I said I'm looking for the true Sabians, because what did the master put out about us? Where is this at? Right here. To all true Nawapians, a Wu-Sabat, January the 8th, 2025. He said, you all are now living in the image of the beast, the devil. What happened to you? He's talking about we're not living a culture. We're not living a culture, family. And that's just the reality of it. There's no reason why we should be stagnant as a tribe. When the master teacher was with us, we were always growing. Growth is a part of our existence in nature. That's in the wisdom of the Hutri. That's one of the principles of our science. Anything that's not growing is dying. Anything that's not growing is dying. You always are growing. You have to grow. That's growth is movement. Change is inevitable. Anything that's stuck, it withers, it dies. We're supposed to be growing, flourishing, and developing. And once we reach our peak, we stay in tune with that level. We're the children of non-ether. We're in tune with the blackness, not the light. That's what we're striving towards. Let go of the petty worries on planet Earth. We are galactic or universal or multiversal beings. The goal is to be in harmony with nature. Nature transcends all different types of universes, multiverses. What do you think the smack circle represents? The smack circle is a composite of multiverses. Each different density is a different dimension, which is a different universe. I've talked about this before in my discussions. Let me see if I can see some of you guys' questions. Hold on. Because I know you guys asking and making statements, and I want to be able to respond to whatever you all are talking about, so we're in tune with each other. Let's see. Better to be. Let me see. I'm looking through some of the stuff you guys put out there. Wabbat. Also, Wabbat, Muisar to all of you, family. Love you all. Glad to see everybody come out. Support. Spread the word, right? I'm glad to see you, coming out of Arizona, coming out of Houston, Texas. That's what's up, family. That is what's up. Let it go and illusion. How important it is. How important is tarak, which is relaxation, when thinking about living a healthy lifestyle while existing in a stressful Zupu culture, and how have you learned to relax over your journey? Again, what brought me to the doctrine is the spiritual teachings. Now, people come into the doctrine for different reasons. What brought me in was, again, the spiritual teachings. Or at least that's what kept me. And so when your focus is about spiritual development, you're going to be focus on things like meditation and concentration exercises. So I was doing those things when I first came in to the doctrine and the culture. Way back in, obviously I didn't do it in I came in 89, but by 1990, I was, rocking and rolling, on those things the master teacher was teaching us, and that's what kept me sound. Now, of course, I've never been a person who was prone to anger, frustration. That's just, I'm fortunate. That's not who I am. A lot of people are like that. And so it may be harder for someone who has a hard time dealing with their emotions, right? Because that's really what it's all about, the control of one's emotions, which is your soul. That's why we lost our soul, because we don't have control of our emotions. Your emotions are controlled through your consciousness, through your brain, controls through, your emotions is moving through your spinal column. Your spinal column is connected to your brain, your thoughts. And so how you think determines your emotional state. When you lose your mind, right, how you think, you don't have control over your emotions. You lose your mind by adapting to a foreign culture. When you adapt to a foreign culture, you start behaving like the foreigners who have no control of it. So you do anything. That's what our people today is. They do everything. They're doing things that is not in their best interest. They don't have no control over their emotional state. And so you see our people are out of their minds. They're literally out of their minds. And they have no control over their emotional behavior. That's why we eat what we shouldn't eat, right? That's the biggest thing, the food addiction that got us all. And the drugs we take, the lust, the things we lust after, the stuff that the Mukasu, got us lusting, his cars, his cell phones, his chasing women. We're gonna go here, there. We're in the shopping malls. We're doing all kinds of things. We're on Amazon Prime, constantly buying stuff. He totally has control over our emotional state. This has to change in order for you to connect with your family, your galactic family, your spiritual family. You have to have control of your emotional state, which means you have to have control of your consciousness. This is why right knowledge is the only key. It restores your consciousness, right knowledge. It's what restores your nine mind. And once you're in your nine mind, you then can control your emotional state. And you can say no to all those things, because we constantly getting these negative thoughts that they put in us through mixing our blood. That's what makes it hard. We mix our genetics. So it becomes 10 times difficult, because we have these voices in our minds telling us to do all these things. So the best way to get yourself under control is to be around like minds, be around other people who are doing these harmonious things. That's why I actually say, you know what, I got to continue to do my lectures and do live so I can talk with you guys, because my job is to transfer my strength to you in the culture, and to tell you how powerful this culture, Wu-Sabat, is. Because the demons out there will lie to you and try to deceive you about the culture, Wu-Sabat. They put out so much negative stuff about us. The sixth ether that comes in black face, black skin, woolly hair, children of sixth ether, claim that I was an ex-Nawapian. It's full of crap. It's full of lies. Those are demons. Those are demons that are out there putting out all this negative information. Why do you think I spend my time reading through the books? Because they won't do that. Or they'll pick sections and they'll just misinterpret this section, lying to you. Again, Leviathan what? Lies. Leviathans lie. They can show you the actual facts. But let's keep going. I heard you talk in the video how to be a good person, about how this capital system is pretty easy to navigate once you understand it. Did you figure out your finances early? Oh, when it comes to economics, okay, it the reason why people are struggling with money, again, everything is knowledge, family, right? Everything is knowledge. Everything is knowledge. And so if you're going to live in the Mukasu system, you have to take the time out to study it. And our people don't do that. And that's why they have challenges, especially with economics. It's not hard making money in this system. It's just what is hard for us or been hard for us, we don't pay attention to the system. A lot of us in the school system are bad students. Now, a lot of that is because their frequency, their vibration is adverse to us. And so we have a hard time functioning in their disgusting system because the system is based on lies, deception, and greed and lust. And that's hard for us. And so you have to have, again, I go back, you have to have control over your emotions to be able to navigate through their horrible system. Again, this is why the master teacher set up the community so that we don't have to deal with that and we work together as a tribe. But we that was a difficult, the community itself, when the master was here, was a very difficult task all to itself, because all of us who came into the community were all children of Leviathan. We were all brainwashed. We had no idea of living in harmony with each other. We had all these bad habits, and we brought that with us into the community, and that's why it was very difficult. And so we have to have, if we're going to do a community again, we have to have a system set up to mitigate all of the negative things we had to deal with so that we don't have the same experience, right? But if you're living in the Mukasu system, you have to study his system. You have to understand his system. His system is based on money. Everything with him is money, 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 money. You know, our people don't study money. They don't study economics, how money is developed and made here. Again, capitalism is what? Buying and selling goods and services. That's all it is. You're either selling a product or you're selling a service, right? A product would be food in the grocery store. They sell a whole bunch of products: milk, eggs, bread. They sell clothes and clothing stores. Those are products. Then you have service. Services is what? A lawyer provides a service. A hairstylist provides a service. The nail salon provides a service, right? So you either can start a business providing a service or selling a product, or you can work for a company selling their products or in providing service that, you know, that they have. So again, so that's basic one. You know, is either get a job or start a business. And then you have to understand, if you're going to start a business, well, what kind of, make sure that there's going to be a clientele for your business. And that's why a lot of business fail, because they go into business and they don't even study, well, who's going to support it? They don't even do a thorough investigation on that. And that's why a lot of people fail in business. So that's a class all to itself. It's a lot to go into. I can't go too much. I'm just trying to give you the basics on that. So I hope that helps. Christian. No, that wasn't. That was Christian. Also, well, she says, so could you then focus on your spiritual development? How did you approach balancing meeting your needs in this culture, but not being caught up in the spell? I'm gonna be honest with you. When I was really like this as a child, because, you know, I grew up, born and raised in New York City. I never liked New York City because of the fact that I didn't like us as a people, how we behaved. We weren't cooperative with each other. You know, everybody was trying to get over. And I never liked that. And the city was, it was just massive competition. And I never liked that. I never liked our behavior. And I always had a sense that it's a self-destructive behavior. That's what gravitated me to the doctrine, because of the fact that, I used to ask as a child and growing up, why do black people behave the way they behave? Why is it that the Mukasu have all of this wealth? Because living in New York City, I lived in Manhattan. So, all the rich white people in Manhattan, you got to see them living, you see how they live. Growing up in Manhattan, anybody knows you have Trump. Everybody knew who Trump was because they had the Trump Towers and all these buildings and stuff like that. So you clearly see white people had all this money and power. And we're living in the projects. We didn't have any of that. And so the question was, why they have every damn thing and we don't? Again, that's what made me want to study their system also economically. How is it, this money thing work? Because our people really didn't understand and really don't take the time out to study it. And that's why we have such a hard time. We don't take their school system seriously, as I was saying before. Now, a lot of that is legitimate. I'm be honest with you, why we have a hard time in their school system, because it's based on white supremacy. And that's hard to get through for a lot of us, especially, the black boys who are targeted. That's what Umar Johnson keeps talking about, how they target black boys in school. So it is hard for us. Trust me. They're constantly suspending us. They're constantly, and, it's just the curriculum itself is brainwashing. Not to mention, a lot of us come from bad homes. Now, I had half and half. As a little child, I had not such a good home, but when I got, when I turned like 10 or whatever, 11, my home environment actually changed for the better. And then it really got really good when I was turned like a young teenager, 13 or 12. So it changed really, really good for me. That helps. It really helps. Your home environment, because a lot of people really have some messed up home environments. But if you listen to, I don't know if you heard of the brother called the Smart Guy, really sharp, but I like him. He had a messed up home environment. Let me pull him up. The Smart Guy, a really messed up home environment with his mom, man. This is the brother right here, the Smart Guy. Really, but he turned his life around. He talks about it, how he turned his life around and became economically successful, got into rap music, whatever. Now, I don't recommend rap, but I'm just saying he came from a really bad home environment, and a lot of our people have, and he was able to turn himself around. But keep in mind, the mass majority of our people don't do that because it takes a certain type of mentality. But the fact that you're attracted to the doctrine, that in itself is a blessing, because most of our people are not attracted to the doctrine because they're so, spellbound by Leviathan. They love the Mukasu and his evil world, and they don't. The right knowledge doesn't attract them because their vibration is so off. So everybody who's attracted to right knowledge is blessed. But again, if you want more details on that, because that can get a personal conversation about economics and stuff like that, you can email me. My email is in the description so you can email me directly for any direct questions, or you can also put comments, in the comment section. I can specifically focus on that. Let's see. Being a person who was a child on the land, I have learned from observing everyone that many are caught up in intellectual pride and they do not do the internal vigorous work. You got that right. Yeah, they have the knowledge. Here's what I noticed with a lot of Wapians. They have right knowledge, right? They got the information, but they don't really understand how to apply it to really get that sound reasoning. Now, what I would argue, the reason why a lot of Nawapians are not good at sound reasoning, right, is because they're neglecting their spiritual development. You raise your consciousness through spiritual development, and that's what I said. that's what helped me in the very beginning when I came into the doctrine. That's what drew me to the doctrine. Or it didn't draw me to the yeah, it did. And that's why I stayed. When I realized the master was the master, that he was a master teacher, like a spiritual master, when I realized that, and I realized that when I first came into a newcomer's class, where the master teacher used to teach, and I heard him teach and say the things he said, I was like, okay, this is the master. I intuitively knew that. Intuition, I knew who he was. Even I didn't understand who he was, but I knew within my heart and soul who that being was, that this is who I need to listen to, right? And so, the spirit moved me to the master, and he had all this knowledge. So I was like, okay, well, in order for me to achieve what he's teaching, I have to study everything he's teaching, and then I have to learn to apply it and practice it. And I did that. I really did that. I applied it to the best of my ability. Now, I'm not saying I'm the best Nawapian, because I'm far from that. I'm not, because I stumble and I have made a lot of mistakes, a whole lot of mistakes, and a lot of stuff I ain't listening to master and all. But I strive at, perfecting myself, as the master teacher taught us. You must strive to perfect yourself, to be better. You will make mistakes, but if you stay on a path, your mistakes will be overshadowed by your accomplishments. So even though I made those mistakes, my mistakes are overshadowed by my accomplishments, things I was able to accomplish and achieve. And any person who's so-called successful will tell you they have so many failures. You only have failures because you're always trying. You're trying. All you need is to succeed once or twice, and you really hit it, and those failures won't matter because of the fact that you've achieved a certain status, because you tried. You can't fail if you don't try, and you can't succeed if you don't try. So you put the work in. So all my efforts into studying right knowledge, I know what the master teaches is true. I don't believe any of the stuff he's teaching. I know what he's teaching is true because I've been able to authenticate and verify. I lived this experience, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why I tell people, the masters showed me they showed me the mothership. I didn't know it was a mothership at the time, and I started telling people about it, but I've seen it. So I know this is real. And in fact, and I didn't even realize he put it in the book. I didn't learn this until a few years ago, because I saw the ship, it had to be 1996. In 1996, and he put it in a Wiseman scroll. Now, the Wiseman scroll came out probably 1996, 1995. I had the book, but I never bought it. I never read the book back then. I didn't even read the book back then. I saw this craft, and it's as big as a city. And that's what he said. He said, this is an illustration of a mothership. It can be as big as a small city on Earth. And it can house many other ships. This is what I saw. It looked just like this. It was round like that. It had those windows like that. It had like these amber lights, and it was in a cloud. He put out a book called, Mystery Clouds. These ships, they come in clouds. And it was humongous. So, and I believe, the Nathar, your family, this is what I'm saying. Why no help from above? Why I was reading a scroll. They will communicate with you if you're communicating with them, if you're trying to acknowledge them. And I was doing that, taking it serious. And that's the key. You have to take this doctrine serious. It takes a lot of study. Like anything, anything in life, it takes practice, study, dedication. If you really want to achieve a certain level, this doctrine is no different. You have to be sincere. People leave the doctrine because they came into something they weren't true. They weren't sincere about it. They weren't really trying to develop themselves spiritually. A lot of students don't meditate. A lot of students don't do concentration. They don't follow the culture. They can quote books all day to you, but they really don't live the culture. They don't implement the culture to their children if they have a family. I did all of those things. You know, I implement the culture to the best of my ability. Of course, like I said, I make mistakes, you know, but to the best of my ability, I implement the culture for myself and my family, you know, to the best of my ability again. And that's all you can do, you know, is you do the best you can. And so, as I was saying before, why no help from above is because we're not putting our best effort forward to communicate with our spiritual family. That's why the master is here, to reconnect us, to connect us to our spiritual family. And then the Nathar will be in your life. They will communicate with you, you know, and because of my spiritual work, they download information into your consciousness. It's real. I mean, people, you know, you hear the master talk about it. Many people talk about it. You don't know it's real until you experience it, where you get information downloaded into you. Many people talk about that. You know, it's a very real experience where they put information in your mind because they're trying to talk to you. You can actually see them, but you know, and physically communicate with them. But the reason why it only hits your mind because you're still vibrating at a low frequency where you're not tapping into their frequency, so you can't see and hear them directly. So, but that communication still comes to you if you're doing the spiritual work. The more you put into your spiritual development, which is all that means is you're raising your vibration, and you're moving your vibration to their vibration, right? The closer you get to that, the clearer the communication becomes. And so I'm telling you from my own personal experience, it's very real. If you put in, you know, if you put that kind of work and dedication, it's very real. And it'll raise your, because they make the doctrine, because they're communicating, they make the doctrine clear in your mind, you know, and you'll actually comprehend a lot of the concepts the master is saying in the books. And then you can apply it physically. You can put it into application. That's no joke. It's very real. That's what I said. It's the only true Nawapians will do all that. The true Sabaeans, as the master teachers is talking about, we're looking for the true Sabaeans. That's what I'm looking for, the true Sabaeans. Then we can work together. We can start working, because once you find people that really truly into the culture and understand it, right, and they're practicing it, we can start working together and we can start accomplishing things. You know, because as what we succeed as a part of all, we fail as individuals, right? Right. That's our affirmation. We're all supposed to know that. So let me hold on. I got a couple more things I want to read. Points. Number 4. You have power to change your vibration, but you choose not to acknowledge it, right? So that's a big problem and all. Everything is vibration. Your body's vibration. And you have the power to change and raise your vibration. But our people don't do that. They don't acknowledge that you can shift your vibration. It happens naturally, like with weight gain. If you gain a lot of weight, your vibration changes. Your body can't function the same way. If you lose a lot of weight, your vibration change. Your body functions differently. Athletes, they have to have a certain vibration in order for them to perform at a high level. When they get out of shape, you see their performance change because their body is vibrating. So you can't, at a certain frequency, they can't use their body the same way. That's why you see certain athletes fail. They let's say professional athletes, right? You know, and I watch basketball, and you see those ones who don't perform at a high level because they're not doing what it takes to have their body at a certain in a shape in a certain condition, right? That's what makes, again, LeBron James so phenomenal, because he puts all of his time and energy into his conditioning. They say he puts a lot of money into it, where other players don't. Like James Harden, they claim he likes the club and hang out. Sometimes he's a basketball player. For those who don't know, but he's a top basketball player. But he got gains weight, and that's not good. And there's other players that are dealing with that issue. So it's all frequency and vibration, and will determine how your body functions. It determines how your senses function, your eyesight, your hearing, your sense of taste, your sense of smell. It's all based on vibration. And you can heighten your sense of smell, your sense of hearing, your sense of sight. You can increase it by doing necessary things to increase your vibration, which meditation does that. Concentration exercises does that. And the ultimate key is learning to breathe in rhythm. That's why the master teacher wrote the breath book. Learning to breathe in rhythm. Rhythmic breathing stimulates the electrons in your blood. When the electrons are stimulated, now, of course, you would have to study some basic chemistry to understand electrons, right? So I will say that. Our bodies are in a negative polarity. Let me just say that. Our bodies are in a negative polarity. What does that mean? That means that you release more energy than you harness. When you go to sleep, your body's harnessing energy. When you're in a sleep state, you're in a positive polarity where your body is taking in energy. When you awake, you're now releasing energy because in order to function during your waking period, you have to use energy. That's why you get tired at night and you go to sleep. Okay? And so what happens is humans are constantly in a negative polarity, always releasing energy, and they don't harness enough energy to restore it, right? And to put their body in a constant harmonious state. We release more energy than we retrieve, right? Or store. Because sleep isn't enough to harness energy. That's why you meditate. Meditation is basically what they call conscious sleep, where you consciously put your body in a sleep state and you're harnessing energy. You're harnessing energy because in the atmosphere, we're in the atmosphere, there is energy, what they call sachem. Ether is in the atmosphere. You can harness it to charge the cells. But most people don't know anything about that. They don't know the science of harnessing energy. That's why our bodies age and wither fast, because our cells deplete itself. When your cells are depleting the way it doesn't replenish. Once you hit a certain age, like 30 years old, your cells start dying off, and that the body's aging and withering away. And you get 70, 60, 70, 80 years old, we're looking all frail and messed up because all our cells withered away, which now you're moving towards death. That's why older people, they can't move. They don't have a lot of energy left because they didn't do anything to harness energy, because they didn't know that they were never taught that science. So it's a lot. It's a lot, family. It's a whole lot. Hold on, let's see if I can go to the next one. Number 5, the 9 mind versus the 6 mind is just different vibrations of existence. All woolly hair melanin dominant people are children of 9 ether by natural nature and can never be anything other, right? And so when you live a lifestyle of 6 ether, which is adverse, that's what drains us. It basically kills us because we're doing something. 6 ether culture can never sustain you. 6 ether culture can never sustain you. That's the problem. Number 6, if you don't control your education and media, you will remain in your conditions based on the laws of conditions. Your conditions can never change if you choose not to change, right? So the law of conditions teaches us that as long as the conditions are the same, the results will be the same. And so we allow the Mukasa to control our education, which brainwashes our children, and they control the media, right? All forms of media, which also brainwashes our people. And And so as long as that keeps happening, our conditions and suffering will continue. Nothing will change until we change that. Again, that goes back to why we should have our own communities. Because all of us are subjugated or subjected to their mass media. All of us are. We're on social media. We're hearing it all the time, you know, and our children are hearing it. And they always focus on the children so that they can control the minds of, you know, of the upcoming generation. You know, so that, you know, that's very bad. Number 7, we Sabians exist to wake the mentally dead by raising their consciousness to their natural nature vibration. Our job is to teach right knowledge, but it's the job of the listener to accept and practice right knowledge, right? So as teachers, all we can do is give you the information. It's up to you to accept it and practice it. You know, so that's very important. Number 8, you lose your soul when you lose your mind, right? So your soul is your emotional being, which is connected and governed by your mental being or your mind. So when you lose your soul, or so-called sell your soul, means you lost your mind or consciousness of who you are by natural nature. Like Black people in America identifying with their conqueror and their ways and culture, and not your African ancestors and their ways and their culture, right? So you hear a lot of Black people in America say, I'm American, I'm, you know, and they don't identify with their ancestors at all. They've given up their ancestors' ways and cultural ideology for the conqueror, their enslaver. So we now accepted the way of life of our slave masters, who are basically our enemies, and we choose to think like them. That's you losing your soul. You lost your mind. You know, which, you know, when your mind is out of whack, you have no control over your emotional state. Remember, your emotions is moving through your spinal column. Your spine is connected to your brain, the medulla oblongata, the lower part of your neck, the back of your head, that connects the brain to the spine. And so your brain is what controls your body, your emotional state, you know. And when you lose your brain, your mind moves through the brain and sends signal through the spine to move the body. When you lose your mind, you lose your emotional, control over your emotions. And when you lose that, you lose your soul. You know, because that soul, that emotional state, energy and motion, right, which is emotion, that's what connects you with nature, makes you in harmony with nature. But if you live a culture that doesn't teach you anything about that, you lose your connection, and you lose your connection to your ancestors. So the whole goal of right knowledge is to restore the soul. The master came to restore the soul, restore your culture, your consciousness of who you are. I hope you understand that. Again, this is why there's no help from above. Last one. We like trees who have been cut off from their roots. We are like trees who have been cut off from their roots, right? When you cut off from your roots, that's the end of your life. Your life is sustained through your roots. Our roots is our ancestors, our connection to our ancestors. When that's disconnected, like I keep saying, when you lose your culture, you're cut off from your roots of who you are. That's the end of your life. So it says, we are living in the third density, but are 9 density beings by nature. So this becomes a place of sickness for us, and maintaining connection to our higher spiritual family becomes medicine, because they tell us what to do and what not to do in this realm of sickness. Keep in mind, this realm is the home of the Mukasu, which is why they are able to rule with such efficiency, using deception, murder, and lust as their number one tools of power, which is behavior characteristics that are contrary to our natural nature, which explains why we have been suffering for the past 6,000 years of this moon cycle, right? Let me read that again. I'm going to read it again. We are living in the third density. That's where we are in the third density. But we are 9 density beings by nature. We're 9. If you read the book, The Actual Facts, Emotional Energy, the master explains that we're 9 density beings by nature. So this becomes a place of sickness for us, right? Because we're in the third density, but we're nine density beings. So we need the energies to function efficiently. We need the energies of 9 ether. But in the third density, you're blocked from that because there's no connection to the ether we need to sustain ourselves. So us falling was inevitable because we're in a realm where we're not getting the proper energy, right? And maintaining connection to our higher spiritual family becomes medicine. Once you're connected to your family, they're like medicine to us, okay? Because they tell us what to do and what not to do in this realm of sickness. They're the ones who guide us. Being that we're in a realm like this, we need that connection to help guide us on what to do and what not to do. But when that connection is cut, that's why we're in our conditions, right? So we're like trees without roots. We're cut off from our connection and guidance. That's why the master teacher had to come here. They had to literally incarnate someone to have a direct connection because we weren't connecting to them spiritually. So keep in mind, this realm is the home of the Mukasu. So the Mukasu are 6 ether beings, 3 ether beings by nature. They come from this realm. They don't come from the realms we come from. So they're the masters of this realm. That's why they rule during this cycle. So I said, keep in mind, this realm is the home of the Mukasu, which is why they are able to rule with such efficiency using deception, murder, and lust as their number 1 tools of power, which is a behavioral characteristic that are contrary to our natural nature, which explains why we have been suffering for the past 6,000 years of this moon cycle. Listen, the Mukasu created nuclear weapons. These guys created weapons that destroy everybody, including the planet. That's how insane they are. And they're willing to do that to maintain power. That's a certain type of consciousness we don't have. It's an insane consciousness, but that's how, that's why I did that lecture last week. I need to study the neural strike weapons. They're coming up with new techniques for mind control. They're obsessed. That's not we don't think like that. You're dealing with a really them as a race of people, they're off the chain. They're off the chain. That's all I can say. All right. Well, that was a lot, family. That was a whole lot. And I pray that was edifying for everyone. And we'll definitely be back next week, family. Next week, same time, Tuesday, 7 p.m. sharp. Let's get the questions going so we can really build on the culture, study these discussions, ask questions, make comments. That helps because it furthers the conversation for all of our edification. It helps me. It helps you guys. Because our ultimate goal is we have to come together. As I keep telling you, I'm looking for the true Nawapians, those who really want to live the culture. Okay? The true Nawapian really, 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 really wants to live the culture. And that's who I'm searching for. The individuals right here, to all true Nawapians of Wu-Sabat, right? Because the master's saying, you all are now living in the image of the beast, the devil. What happened to you? Because he's not seeing the growth, the development. We haven't figured out how to free the master teacher. And as I told you, only the non-mind can defeat the 6. And the master has been gone for over 2 decades now. And that's because we have not been living our nine mind, which allows us to have the highest level of reasonability, which gives us the highest level of decision-making ability. You can only establish the nine mind through following the culture of Wu-Sabat, living according to, our cultural principles, family. And so again, I'm in search for the true Nawapians who really want to work together to solve this problem. As we say, love and unity, that divine love, right, makes you want to be in harmony with your own. And we will, do accordingly. That's the key, because action is what matters. Not talk. You can talk about it all you want. It's the action that matters, putting in the results, action plans, and getting results. That's all that matters, not the talking. And so the goal is to give you the right knowledge so that you can begin to put that knowledge into action. But with that being said, we're gonna chime out. We'll, again, like I said, we'll be back next week. So much. I think next week we're gonna talk about the man of the hour, why the master teacher is considered the man of the hour. He put out a book back in the 90s called The Man of the Hour. His daughter wrote it. And we're going to talk about that. And if you look at the actual facts, I think number 45, True Guidance, the guidance, it talks about why the master teacher is the man of the hour. So it's important you understand what he represents in relation to yourself and his mission, the mission the master is on, how we conform to that mission to embody it, to achieve our goals. All of this is important. Will help. So hopefully, we'll have that discussion next week. If you have any questions, again, about the culture, developing yourself better, do not hesitate to ask. With that being said, Moisar, Wadu, bless you all. Much love. Until the next time.